Hello and welcome back to the Stacey West and to another preview for Cup finals to go. We all know what we need to do to get into that top six, and that starts with a pretty much a must win, I would say, at home on Saturday to a Wigan Athletic side who, let's be honest, their season could very much peter out now, and not too many of them would really care, considering they're in a safe position and far too far away from those playoff positions. To have a little look at the opposition view, I am joined by Adam Pendlebury from the Progress with Unity podcast. Adam, how are we doing, mate?
Yeah, very good. Very good, thanks. Yeah, I'm in good health. Weather's terrible, as always, in Wigan. Football hasn't been great, but life in general is good. And like you said, we will be playing League One football next season, and overall, it's been a good season. So I'm always, even though this glass here is half empty, I'm a glass half full.
Love it. No, exactly. You will be playing League One football next season. There's effectively, it's a mathematically zero chance either way.
Mathematically safe on Tuesday. Yeah. So yeah, get it. We got the champagne out. We didn't really, because we've been. I think we've been safe. We hit that point tally about 4 weeks ago, really, and not won a game since. But we've done all the hard work, haven't we? I mean, really, if you think about it, we're going into the last. We've been going in the last 3 games, but the first 4 games of the season essentially was where we got rid of that 8-point deficit. And we did a lot of our hard work there, and then won games when we needed to. And we've got to a point now where, like you said, we didn't have a chance at the playoffs. We were pretty much there. But that said, when we had a discussion a few weeks ago, I think we were on the EFL League One podcast, and I think Wigan and Lincoln were in very similar positions in the table. If Lincoln might have been a point behind Wigan. I'm
trying to think whether we were ever behind you in the. I think I know there was the conversation back when we last played in December, and there's been a few times since then as well that you technically 8 points behind us. So if there wasn't for the points deduction, you would have been on level pegging with us. And I guess that's kind of the perfect place to sort of start that, because look, the start of your season was defined by this 8-point deduction. Last summer for you wasn't about a normal transfer window. It was defined by all the goings on off the pitch, which it's never nice to see. Even as an opposition fan, that's not something you want to see. You want to see other teams preparing in the same way that you are for a season. And I remember looking at Wigan and genuinely being worried about the position you were in, like we have been with Reading all season. And then you managed to eclipse that points deduction almost immediately. What was it, within 4 games? And since then, you've come on really strong. And is there an argument that if you didn't have that points deduction, but everything else had still gone on, but you didn't have the points deduction, could you have been in a much higher league position? Because let's be honest, you'd have been spurred on a lot more recently because you'd have had something to play for, maybe.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, really, because I think we certainly have shown through the season with some of the victories that we've had. I mean, we've beaten Peterborough twice. We won at Derby on the first day of the season. We've beaten Bolton twice. We've beaten Oxford. Obviously, we drew with yourselves. We'll see what happens on Saturday. So the sides sort of higher up the table, we've performed. Blackpool's another one they're quite high in the table, although they're not going to make the playoffs. But we seem to save our performances for the better sides, and we've really struggled against the sides sort of from the middle to the bottom. So it's difficult, really, because it's a young side. I think they get that sort of the sort of energized and big games for them. They can up their game, whereas when when it comes to those really tough games against teams like Stevenage, those types of games, and then some of the sides like Burton and Port Vale, who we haven't beaten this season, I think they haven't got the nous yet to know how to win those type of games. And also as well, I don't think we're ready in any way, shape or form. The infrastructure is nowhere near ready for the Championship. So I think, yes, technically speaking, you can always sneak in that 6th place and then you can get lucky and get promoted. But I just think it would definitely be too soon. I think in terms of the project moving forward, I think this is where most people would be happy to be if we'd have taken it from the start of the season.
I can kind of see that from the outside looking in. I mean, at the end of the day, with, like you say, with everything that had gone on last summer, kind of halting your progress and effectively delaying your preparations for the season, as I say, until quite late on, basically until the season had almost started in some respects, then it's hardly a surprise to kind of hear what it is that you're saying there. When you talk about, you know, struggling to pick up the victories against the sides that you'd maybe be expected to beat, you know, and it's something that Lincoln had an issue with last season. We would get some really strong, solid results against the top sides in the division. I think our record against the top 4 was unbeaten, if I remember correctly, or there was only 1 loss in there. But again, against the bottom sort of half size that you'd go into the games, maybe being the favourites with the bookies, we'd struggle with. For us, we sort of knew what it was. It was kind of the play style. We were a more defensive outfit that was better on the counter-attack, but then we weren't necessarily great at going at teams and creating from nothing sort of thing. Is that kind of the similar situation with you? Do you prefer to have a team come at you rather than you have to sort of take the fight to your opposition?
Yeah, definitely. There's certain sides that we have struggled with. In particular, actually looking at the sides that, apart from Carlisle, although we only beat Carlisle once, but we did play well against Carlisle. The other sides that came up from League Two last season, we struggled against the style of play really. And yeah, when sides like the last 2 home games in particular, Port Vale and Burton have just sort of sat in thinking, let's make sure we get at least a point from this game. And we've just not been able to sort of break them down. When it's sort of a deep line, low block, it's quite difficult for us because we don't have that striker who can make the runs. And apart from Matt Smith in midfield, really, we don't necessarily have the person who can actually thread that pass through. Most of our goals really this season have come from getting the ball out wide quickly. And if you're playing a side that is pushing forward, if the fullbacks are pushing forward, you often end up with one-on-one situations, and the likes of Jordan Jones, the likes of Callum McManaman and Humphreys earlier in the season, if they were one-on-one, did really well and then managed to get to the byline pullbacks, and then one of your midfielders like an Asgard who scored a lot of goals this season could come in on. But we don't have that. We don't really have that striker that's sort of gonna make goals themselves and gonna be a fox in the box or anything like that. So I think sides that come at us and it's a proper fight, it's like hammer and tongue going at it, rather than one side just wanting to sit there and be very defensive. So that's why I'm probably looking forward to the next couple of games, the Lincoln and the Portsmouth game, more than I have the last 3 or 4 games. They've just not given me any enjoyment really. At all. You go to a match and you lose and it's a good game, but it seems a while since I've been to a good game. But that said, there's so many mitigating circumstances. You've already mentioned one. Obviously, this time last year, the future of the club was in serious doubt. I think it was roughly about this time last year. I think it was our 5th late payment of wages. which meant we breached the having to have 125% of wages in our bank. We knew there was a points deduction coming. The owners were saying they weren't putting any more money in. So, from that point of the season all the way through to sort of late June, early July, the club's future was in doubt. And then obviously the EFL then hit us with the 8-point deduction, but also the transfer embargo, which made our signings very restrictive in terms of we could only get out of contract players, free loans, and the rest of it was, of course, promoting from the academy. So that's been from the 2 windows where you can maybe top up and even spend a little bit of money. We've not been able to do that. That's going to change from this transfer window. So I think recruitment and the development of our young players. I think someone put a stat out: 42% of the minutes played this year by our team have come from academy players. So that's pretty outstanding. We're not far off half of the entire minutes coming from the Wigan academy directly. And then if you throw in a few other young players that we've picked up as well from other clubs, you're probably way over. So that I think we've overperformed in my view. But you know what it's like. As soon as the expectations get raised, football fans are dreamers, aren't they? So
don't we know it at the minute? Trust me. It looked at one point like a home game against Wigan, a few games off from the end of the season, could just be a bit of a mid-table clash, have one of those kind of end of season feels. But obviously that isn't the case for us now, because, as you said, those expectations are now rising, and they obviously will have done with Wigan fans even after those first 4 games of the season. Like I say, when that points deduction was effectively eclipsed very early on. So looking ahead to Saturday then, how will we kind of expect you to line up? What sort of shape do you guys utilise?
Honestly, I have got no idea. And that's not because I don't. I mean, obviously I'm on the wing, but it's just because there's so many changes week in, week out, formation changes as well. I think we can say Sam Tickle will be in goal. I think that Charlie Hughes has pretty much played every game he's been available. But will he play in a 2? Will he play in a 3 with wing backs? You just don't know, and it changes within games often as well. Now, in a way, you can say that's not necessarily a bad thing because you've got flexibility, but it's flexibility versus continuity, and it does seem at the moment, although I don't think he'd go on record to say this, that it's a bit experimental at the moment because there's quite a lot of players out of contract, and I think he's trying to get a look at different sort of patterns of play, different formations, so he maybe makes a more educated decision on who. There's some players that he'll definitely let go because of the wages, but there'll be others that decisions need to be made on. So if I was to have a guess, I think we'd kind of probably play the wing backs, the sort of 2 sort of standard midfielders, and then 2 wide forwards and a central forward. We've tended to do that in the away matches, and then a more standard 4-3-3 in the home matches. But if you notice a big change in the middle of the game, I mean, the other week we made 4 substitutions at half time. In fact, I think for the very first time in Wigan's history, we actually made 6 substitutions because we got the concussion substitution, the last substitution of the game. I think it was in that game. I mean, making 4 changes at half time is a bit like a friendly, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You're talking about this from your point of view, very much being a pre-season friendly. And we spoke with Ivan, Carlisle fan, the other week ahead of our game there, and they've stopped using loan players at the moment. They've stopped starting loan players. They're only all players that will be out of contract next season. They're only starting at the minute players who are going to be there for next year to try and create a sense of continuity going forward. And it's those little kind of nuances that certain managers want to do to prepare for next season. That when you know you're safe, or in Carlisle's case, they're already down sort of situation, then you're given that freedom to be able to do that. Whereas obviously we're not really given that position. So looking ahead to Saturday then, and put in a number on it. What's the score prediction from you, Adam?
Well, I think I've already alluded to earlier that I think this is a game that is gonna suit us. As I've already mentioned, it's a supporters club weekend, and we tend to do pretty well on our supporters club weekenders.
That's what I want to hear, Adam.
So, I mean, everything would tell you that this is a Lincoln banker, but that's not Wigan like, and I don't think we'll have enough to win it. But I think we might be able to nick a point. I think we might be able to get a 1-1 draw from the game. I mean, it won't make any difference to us. We'll still have a nice evening out in Lincoln, but I guess it would be for you dropping 2 points onto Wigan, given the position you're in. So I guess, I don't know, like, how much pressure is on you, because there's been no pressure really, has there, for the last few weeks? But now you're actually there. Yeah. The pressure's then on, isn't it?
Saturday's a must win. Saturday we have to win, really.
Yeah. So that might help us. That might help us in a way. But that's why I'm saying possibly a draw.
No, that's fair enough. I think. I mean, I feel like our manager, our management team, our squad, they, as much as, you know, they are looking at the table, because they always do. They'll sit there and say in press conferences that they're not looking at the table. They're all talking rubbish. We all know they do. But I feel like they're not feeling that sense of pressure as much as they're feeling that sense of let's go out and do this, kind of the motivation from being in this position already, rather than the pressure of losing it. But I mean, you know, I don't know. It's just the way that I feel like it's kind of coming across so far. So with that, I'm gonna say that we're gonna get a victory. I think it'll be 2-0. We won't blow you out of the park. I think it'll be a tight game, but we'll get a goal reasonably early, and then a goal in the second half as well to kind of wrap up the game. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, to be honest, at the end of you never go into a game wanting to lose in any way, shape or form, even if it affects another side. But if at the end of the game you win, I'd look at it and say, you know, I'd rather the sides, you know, like push it like Lincoln's and like, if you got into that playoff position, and I'd love it if you ended up playing Bolton and not Bolton out, not Bolton out in the first in the semi-final. But obviously that's another matter. It's very tight in those top two positions, the second and third in particular. So, and we've got a say in with Portsmouth, but they're looking pretty solid now, aren't
they? No, absolutely. I think that's the thing. Portsmouth are probably done in that sense. They're probably title won. So. No, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining me then, Adam. Thank you all for watching. Make sure to go check out the Progress with the Unity channel. Again, thanks so much. Up the Imps.